99 million. That was the count. Not 1 million, not 10, but 99, written in characters so sharp they might have been carved into stone, a number meant to outlast grief itself. 99 million human beings, executed in 1 hour, under the bright glare of alien lights. The Galactic Empire had promised a demonstration of power. This was their sermon. The feed unfolded in real time. Entire human colonies, outer rim settlements, bustling cities under pale alien suns, emptied. Families corralled into squares, soldiers in black armor raising energy cannons. No speeches, no trials, no mercy, just the mechanical efficiency of a purge designed for spectacle. The aliens wanted witnesses, and they got them. Across the galaxy, creatures watched. Scaled merchants clutching their tails, feathered diplomats clicking nervously, cybernetic hybrids pausing mid-calculation. Some laughed, sharp and shrill. Others sighed with pity, muttering that it was a cruel thing, but inevitable. But a few, the old ones, the scarred ones, bowed their heads, whispering in tones like morning bells. The line has been crossed. The cage has been struck. On Earth, deep beneath the surface, where bunkers swallowed light, a room full of humans sat in perfect stillness. The air hummed with the glow of the screens, the only movement the slow drift of steam rising from untouched cups of coffee. Faces were carved in stone. Not one tear fell. Not yet. Not here. The alien anchor's voice droned from the broadcast, translation software rendering it into clipped, mockingly polite English. The human species is to understand its place. This lesson is costly, but necessary. The Empire forgives mistakes, but never weakness. Your defiance has ended. Your kind will return to obedience or vanish. In the front row of the chamber, General Monroe folded his hands. His hair was steel gray, his expression almost bored, though his eyes glinted with something sharp enough to cut. He leaned toward the diplomat beside him and said, in the same tone one might use to remark on the weather, "Reminds me of a bad barbecue." The diplomat, a slight woman with ink-dark eyes, raised one brow. "A barbecue?" He nodded, lips twitching. "All smoke, no flavor." A few stifled chuckles rippled across the table. It was not joy, but ritual, the kind of humor humanity used to keep grief from strangling the breath. The aliens who monitored the bunker feed would see only smiles. They would not understand. They never did. High above the council chamber, a screen flickered another feed. An alien warlord stood upon a balcony, addressing his troops. His armor was bone white, etched with symbols of conquest. Behind him, piles of confiscated human artifacts burned. Books curling in flame, guitars and violins splitting under heat, a child's baseball glove turned to ash. The warlord's mandibles clicked in triumph. Behold, the relics of a primitive breed. They treasured toys, not power. They mistook sentiment for strength. Now they will learn. The room in Earth's bunker remained still. Only Alan Hardy moved. He was younger than the others, though the lines at his eyes suggested lifetimes lived in shadow. He wore a simple suit, the kind that drew no notice in any room, and sipped calmly from a chipped white mug. The broadcast firelight flickered across his face, but he did not flinch. "They really think this ends us," he murmured, almost gently. Monroe's gaze slid to him. "You disagree?" Hardy smiled, a faint, quiet thing. "I never disagreed. I only wait for the right cue." On other worlds, the reactions differed wildly. In the violet deserts of Rhinar, merchants jeered. The humans are finished. In the crystalline cities of Vela, scholars wrung their hands. The Empire has gone too far. They've provoked the unpredictable. And in the dark halls of Torksh, an elder with eyes clouded white leaned on his staff and croaked, "They have awakened the wolves." But the Empire did not listen. Empires never do. The broadcast rolled on. Executions layered upon executions. Alien soldiers herded humans like cattle, their weapons gleaming. The feed did not censor the screams. It magnified them. The spectacle was theater, and the Empire demanded applause. And applause it got, from the cruel, from the fearful, from those who believed the lesson would keep peace. They did not notice the quiet watchers. They did not understand that silence was not surrender. In the bunker, Monroe finally exhaled. He spoke with the dry precision of a man reciting a grocery list. They wanted 99 million dead. They got them. That's the bait. Bait, one of the younger officers asked, voice tight. Hardy set his mug down with care, as though even porcelain deserved dignity. His voice was almost apologetic when he answered. Every predator thinks it understands the trap it set. But true hunters know. The best snare is the one your enemy believes he invented. The room absorbed his words, the weight of them settling like stones into water. On the broadcast, an alien diplomat raised a glass of emerald wine, addressing a chamber full of his peers. To victory, to the taming of Earth, to the end of their insolence. And somewhere deep in the shadows of the human bunker, a voice whispered a phrase that carried across centuries of folklore, a phrase spoken not in bravado, but in inevitability. It's time to open the cellar. The younger officer frowned. The cellar. Monroe's lips curled into something that was not a smile, but not far from it. Don't worry. You'll meet who lives down there. The broadcast suddenly cut to an alien newscaster, feathered crest bobbing, as he spoke cheerfully of peace restored. Behind him, statistics scrolled. Human losses tallied like banknotes, colonies listed as pacified. The numbers crawled upward like a plague. Alan Hardy leaned forward, resting his elbows lightly on the table. His eyes gleamed with polite warmth, yet beneath them ran a current that made even the seasoned officers shift in their seats. They've mistaken our silence for despair, he said softly. But silence is only breath drawn in before the shout. In the alien capital, the celebrations grew louder. Fireworks erupted in alien skies, illuminating banners that declared, "The human rebellion is over." Merchants drank. Soldiers feasted. Governors congratulated themselves. And through every glowing screen, every broadcast beam, the number 99 million blazed like a trophy. On Earth, no one feasted. No one clapped. The coffee cooled. The screens dimmed. And in that cooling silence, something older than grief stirred. Hardy lifted his mug again, though the liquid inside had long gone cold. He looked at the screen not with mourning, but with a kind of patience that made predators uneasy. You know what's funny about numbers? He asked. His voice was light, almost conversational. They look so heavy, so final. But numbers are just ink. They can be rewritten. The young officer swallowed. Sir, what exactly are we rewriting? Hardy's smile sharpened by a fraction, the warmth of a knife pressed against silk. History. On the alien side, the anchor signed off the broadcast with smug finality. The galaxy may rest easy tonight. The human threat has been extinguished. The screens in the bunker went dark. In the silence that followed, Monroe tapped his knuckle against the table 3 times. A code. Doors hissed open. Men and women rose, not in chaos, but in sequence, their movements as precise as the gears of a watch. Hardy remained seated, finishing the last drop of his cold coffee. He looked almost tired, almost ordinary, as though he might walk out into the morning sun and buy bread like any man. But his eyes told another story. When he finally rose, the words he spoke were quiet, nearly kind, yet carried the weight of a hammer falling. They wanted to see the monsters under their bed. Now they will. And somewhere beyond the walls of Earth, in the silent dark between stars, something laughed. A laugh without mirth, a laugh with teeth. The cellar door was opening. It was the sound of commanders in their gilded war rooms, raising jeweled cups and congratulating themselves for the pacification of Earth's colonies. They called it justice, a necessary cruelty. They mistook it for victory. The laughter rolled like thunder, arrogant, endless, until it stopped. Not because their throats grew tired, but because across their secure channels came a single human voice, clear and maddeningly polite. "Good evening, gentlemen," the voice said, smooth as whiskey poured into glass. "I do hope you've enjoyed your celebration. I have a question for you. Do you believe in monsters?" The alien counselors froze. The voice carried no static, no interference. It had slipped into their frequency with the ease of a whisper slipping into a dream. The translation matrix flickered, confused, because though the words were plain, the tone was wrong. Too calm, too courteous. On the far side of the galaxy, a flagship shuddered as alarms wailed. Soldiers scrambled to their stations. But the screens showed nothing, no fleet, no incoming ships. Only a shadow, long and unnatural, stretching across the stars. And then, from that shadow, a shape emerged. He wore a cape, red, white, and blue, absurd in its theatricality, snapping in solar winds that should have shredded cloth. His smile gleamed wide, bright enough to unsettle. His boots touched the hull of the alien dreadnought as if gravity itself bent for him. And when he raised his hand, saluting mockingly, the soldiers inside began to scream. The Boogeyman had arrived. He was not a ghost, not a myth. He was flesh and blood, broad-shouldered, grinning like a carnival host at a funeral. His voice carried through hull plating, through airlocks, into the minds of those who had sworn to never fear anything. "I hear you've been playing with our toys," he said. "Mind if I play back?" The dreadnought's cannons lit. Beams of energy cut across the void. The Boogeyman laughed, not cruelly, but with the unbothered joy of someone who had already won. He leapt, and where he touched, metal bent like wax. Cannons twisted backward. Hatches imploded. The cape swept, and corridors ran red with a kind of ruin that left no remains to bury. On Earth, in the bunker, officers watched the feed in silence. General Monroe muttered, "Still ridiculous." His mouth twitched as if he'd spit. A cape. Of all damn things. Alan Hardy sat across from him, posture perfect, eyes following every frame with the calm detachment of a man reading weather reports. He sipped his coffee and said, "Ridiculousness is the point. They laugh until they choke." Monroe grunted. "And you?" Hardy set the mug down, finger steady. "I don't laugh." The camera feeds shifted. Another world, another terror. In a fortress city, where alien officers dined on roasted beasts, the lights went out. The soldiers grumbled, checked circuits, found nothing. Then the first one fell, throat opened, without sound. Another dropped, chest punctured neat as embroidery. Panic swept the hall. Chairs clattered, claws scraped against stone. But the killer did not rush, did not roar. He walked, calm, deliberate. Alan Hardy stepped into the flickering light. Not in armor, not in cape. A dark suit, immaculate, tie straight, hair combed with precision. His expression polite, apologetic even. He moved like a man reluctant to intrude, yet every step left silence in his wake. "Forgive me," he said softly to the terrified commander pinned against the wall. "I try to avoid rudeness, but there are debts that must be paid." His hands worked like instruments, each motion efficient, controlled. No wasted strike, no flourish, only inevitability. When the hall finally stilled, he brushed his cuffs, as if blood were dust, and sat at the abandoned table. He poured a glass of alien wine, inhaled the aroma, and murmured, "Not to my taste." The galaxy had seen brutality before, but this was different. One man who smiled too wide, one who smiled too little, and together they rewrote fear. Alien commanders began to whisper in their bunkers. The name Boogeyman spread like a virus. Parents hissed it at children who misbehaved. "Eat your food, or the Boogeyman will find you." Soldiers muttered it under breath, spitting for luck. It was not supposed to be real, yet he stood against fleets and did not fall. And then the other name, Alan Hardy. No one shouted it. It passed like contraband, as if speaking it aloud invited death. Hardy was not a storm, not a spectacle. He was inevitability. He arrived when the lights dimmed, when doors locked, when your heart had just begun to believe you were safe. And then you weren't. In the Empire's High Council, voices clashed. Some called the humans desperate, deploying myths as propaganda. Others urged caution, noting how many fleets had vanished. A Valen scholar, feathers trembling, cried, "Do you not see? They wear masks because the truth beneath is worse." But arrogance won the vote. Arrogance always does. On Earth, Monroe slammed a file down before Hardy. "I want the record clear," he growled. "This isn't vengeance. This isn't madness. This is order. Do you understand?" Hardy's gaze lifted, steady and calm. "General, order is what I am. If I wanted chaos, I would smile like him. A chuckle crackled across the comms, the boogeyman tuning in, his grin audible even without sight. Careful, Hardy. Folks might think you've got a sense of humor buried somewhere. Hardy allowed himself a breath that might have been amusement, though no one could be sure. If I do, it's buried deep enough they'll never find it. Together, they advanced, one laughing, one quiet. Planets fell in hours. Garrisons vanished, without signals. The Empire scrambled, unable to match the tempo. Every counterstroke met emptiness, as if humans had known the moves before they were played. And perhaps they had. Alien analysts obsessed over the feeds. They dissected the boogeyman's cape, Hardy's measured stride, the strange cadence of their speech. They built simulations, predicting weaknesses, but none of the models held. The humans broke patterns deliberately, weaving unpredictability into design. It was as if they'd trained for centuries not to fight stronger, but to fight stranger. Among themselves, alien soldiers shared stories. One swore he'd seen the boogeyman drinking soda on a battlefield, smiling through blood. Another claimed Hardy had sat across from him at a captured outpost, sharing a meal before sending him home alive, whispering, "Tell them I was merciful." Mercy, it seemed, was the cruelest cut. Back in the bunker, Monroe rubbed at his temples. "They'll call us devils." Hardy shook his head. "No. Devils they'd understand. Devils tempt. Devils beg. They will call us something worse." Monroe frowned. "What?" Hardy's eyes softened, his voice almost tender. "Polite." For in every broadcast interception, in every transmission leaked across the stars, humans did not rage. They did not scream vengeance. They smiled. They bowed. They apologized before killing. And that was what unstrung the galaxy. That was what shook the foundations of empires. On a distant station, alien children huddled as sirens wailed. One whispered, "The humans are coming." Another asked, "Which one?" And the first answered, voice trembling, "It doesn't matter. Both mean we're already dead." The Empire's propaganda ministers scrambled to restore confidence. They aired speeches mocking humanity's theatrics. They scoffed at the Cape, derided Hardy as a failed actor playing assassin. Yet every broadcast was interrupted by static, and through the static came a voice. Sometimes it was laughter. Sometimes it was apology. Either way, it was human. The laughter and the apologies spread further than fear itself. And still, Earth remained silent. No grand declarations, no rallies. Just coffee cooling in bunkers, quiet men and women nodding to signals no alien ear could interpret. The Empire had demanded obedience. Instead, it had summoned legends. The boom of laughter had opened this act, but what followed was quieter, heavier. The realization dawning across the galaxy that this war was no longer measured in fleets or firepower. It was measured in whispers, in names, in the knowledge that somewhere out there, two men walked in opposite ways toward the same end, and the end was written in blood. Alan Hardy sat once more at a table, wine untouched, cuffs straightened. He glanced at the comm feed where the boogeyman leaned, cape draped across a throne of alien wreckage, grin wide as a sunrise. Hardy's voice was calm, steady, final. Phase 1 is complete. The boogeyman's grin sharpened. Then let's see how they handle Phase 2. And somewhere in the black between stars, thousands of cloaked human ships flickered awake. The silence of empires that had believed themselves eternal, suddenly cracked open by a truth they could not explain. Reports stacked higher than bodies. Fleets gone dark. Outposts abandoned without a shot fired. Soldiers refusing to leave their barracks, whispering that they had seen shadows where none should be. The tragedy was not measured in fire, but in faith, faith undone, certainty stripped from the bones of a civilization that had always thought itself untouchable. Across the galaxy, alien commanders argued in gilded halls. Some demanded more ships, others more executions. None admitted fear, but it coiled in their throats like smoke. Every conversation returned to the same two names, the boogeyman and Hardy. One was spectacle, a cape across the void, laughter echoing where steel should sing. The other was a murmur in the dark, a hand that tidied cuffs before bloodied them. Together they bent reality, and the Empire, for the first time, bent with it. On Vela Prime, a scholar addressed the Senate. Her feathers quivered, voice breaking. You do not understand what they are. These humans are not soldiers. They are stories, and stories spread faster than fear. Her warning ended with laughter from ministers fat with power. But laughter now sounded different. It was brittle, defensive, a shield that cracked with every echo. Meanwhile, in the void, the Boogeyman played his games. He leapt across warships as if they were stepping stones, his cape slicing through darkness like a banner of ridicule. He sang as he dismantled fleets, old human songs no alien tongue could follow. One line repeated often, confusing translators. Take me out to the ballgame. Alien analysts scrambled to decode its tactical significance. Was it a code? A doctrine? Was ballgame a weapon? They tore apart archives, dissecting baseball footage, mistaking children's laughter for military drills. And while they obsessed over the cape, Hardy walked unseen. He boarded stations under false names, strolled past guards who did not notice him, and left behind only emptied command posts. He interrogated without raising his voice, extracted maps, codes, and secrets with nothing more than courtesy. Survivors swore his apologies haunted them longer than any wound. I'm sorry for the inconvenience, he would say, before snapping a neck or erasing an empire's lifeline. The empire's confidence shook harder with each report. Fleets recalled for defense found their fuel depots already ash, their supply chains strangled. Colonies loyal for centuries turned coats overnight, whispering that humanity had offered them something the empire never did: dignity. Merchants who once sneered at humans began smuggling weapons to them, muttering, "Better a polite wolf than a cruel master." In the bunker beneath Earth, Monroe studied the reports. His hand drummed on the table in an old soldier's rhythm. They're unraveling faster than expected. His voice held no triumph, only calculation. At this pace, they'll collapse before the end of the cycle. Hardy stood nearby, as still as stone. Not collapse. Transformation. Monroe looked up sharply. Explain. They're not merely afraid, Hardy said. They're infected. With doubt. With imagination. They're beginning to see us not as men, but as inevitability. Once that vision takes root, they will tear themselves apart trying to escape it. The general grunted. So we don't just win battles. We become their nightmares. Hardy's eyes softened, though his tone stayed steady. We already are. A new broadcast cut through the chamber. Alien propaganda, desperate and loud. The anchor declared the Boogeyman a fraud, a holographic trick. Hardy a myth invented by Earth to hide its weakness. Behind the anchor, statistics scrolled. 99 million dead. 200 colonies subdued. Human defiance finished. The words rang hollow. Even the broadcast stuttered, as if embarrassed. And then, right there, the feed distorted. Static hissed. The alien anchor's mouth moved, but the voice was not his. It was laughter, rolling and wild, unmistakably human. You keep saying finished, the Boogeyman's voice taunted. Funny thing about us, we don't finish easy. The screen flickered again. This time Hardy's calm baritone slipped through, so polite it chilled the bones. Correction. We don't finish at all. We adapt. The feed cut. Across alien worlds, citizens whispered. Was the Empire truly in control if humans spoke through their channels at will? Markets trembled. Armies muttered. The Foundation cracked deeper. On the flagship Seraphon, Admiral Kether slammed his claws against the table. They cannot be everywhere, he shouted. It is illusion. Fear makes shadows long. But even as he spoke, a messenger rushed in, trembling, reporting that 3 more fleets had gone silent. Kether's mandibles clicked in fury, but beneath his rage lay something worse. The first taste of belief. The galaxy's tragedy deepened, not the death of millions, but the death of certainty. An empire built on fear discovered a predator it could not intimidate. And every soldier, every citizen felt the shift. The humans were no longer victims. They were the storm. In the bunker, Monroe stared at Hardy. They'll call us demons. Hardy shook his head gently. No. Demons tempt. Demons beg for souls. We do not beg. Monroe pressed. Then what do we call ourselves? Hardy's eyes reflected the dim light, calm as always. We are the consequence. The boogeyman broke another fleet that day, spinning through fire with laughter trailing like smoke. Hardy ended another council, leaving glasses half filled and chairs forever empty. Together, they rewrote the map of fear. But the true blow had not yet fallen. From hidden arrays buried in asteroid belts, human signals pulsed. Coordinates flickered across consoles, directing cloaked ships toward key systems. Not for defense, not even for conquest, for demonstration. Monroe gave the order without flourish. Phase 2 begins. The stars themselves seemed to lean closer. Fleets stirred, unseen. Worlds held their breath. And in the vast, trembling silence, the Empire realized that humanity had never fought back with desperation. They had fought back with patience. The boom of silence had cracked their faith. The boom of laughter had mocked their certainty. Now came the boom of inevitability. The Empire was shaken, and the galaxy knew it. In one last intercepted feed, a child's voice, alien frightened, asked her mother, "Are the humans coming here?" The mother hushed her, pulling her close, whispering what she wanted to believe. But the child's next words cut deeper than any fleet could. It doesn't matter if they are. They're already everywhere. And in the bunker, Alan Hardy allowed himself a final sip of coffee, stone cold by now. His voice carried softly, almost kindly, across the room. They thought they saw monsters. They haven't yet. The lights dimmed as the cloaked fleets moved into place. The cellar door was not only open, it was wide. The boom that opened this act was not fire, but collapse. The collapse of an empire that had believed itself carved into eternity. Towers of arrogance cracked like glass underfoot, and every system that once swore loyalty to the galactic throne now whispered in fear of shadows. The tragedy was no longer confined to humans slaughtered on colony soil. It stretched across the galaxy as the weight of inevitability pressed down. The Empire had mistaken patience for weakness, silence for surrender, smiles for submission. They would now see what humanity had hidden behind those masks. On the Empire's core world, the High Hall quivered with argument. Admirals shouted. Ministers rattled their jewelry like chains. The Emperor himself, tall, scaled, crowned in iron, slammed claws into stone. "They are men," he roared, "flesh and bone, tricksters and ghosts. Crush them, and they end." His words thundered, but the eyes of those who heard them flickered with doubt. Reports of fleets vanishing, of stations emptied, of soldiers deserting, all traced back to two names. The boogeyman, with his cape and his laugh, had made their war fleets look like toys. Alan Hardy, polite and merciless, had made their governors and generals look like lambs prepared for slaughter. The galaxy was losing its faith not in the humans, but in the Empire's ability to stop them. Meanwhile, in the void, cloaked human fleets slid from shadows like sharks through deep water. They revealed themselves not with horns or banners, but with precision strikes that felt like inevitability itself. Entire fuel chains severed. Communication networks rewired. Weapons pointed inward by invisible hands. Humanity had not only survived, they had been preparing. The cellar door had opened, and what crawled out was not chaos, but design. On board a captured alien cruiser, Hardy sat at the head of a long table. The room smelled of blood masked with incense. Around him slumped the bodies of alien commanders, their eyes glassy, their cups half full of poisoned wine. Hardy did not touch the food. His hands were folded neatly, his suit unwrinkled, his tie perfectly straight. He gazed across the table as if awaiting a conversation that would never come. "Politeness is a courtesy," he murmured, "but courtesy is wasted on those who mistake it for surrender." A comm device crackled. The boogeyman's voice spilled in, bright and terrible. "Hardy, you've really got to work on your hosting skills. Not a single guest makes it through dessert." Hardy's lips twitched, a shadow of what might have been a smile. "I prefer quiet company." "Yeah," the boogeyman laughed, The sound like a carnival in a graveyard. Me, I like crowds. Makes the screaming louder. The transmission cut with static. Outside, alien ships exploded in arcs of fire as the boogeyman ripped through another fleet. Hardy rose, smoothing his cuffs, and stepped out into the corridor. He moved like a man on his way to a meeting, not a battlefield. Yet behind him, a trail of death marked every step. In the high hall, panic reached fever pitch. A senator shrieked, "They know our moves before we make them. They are inside our systems, our minds." An admiral slammed a fist into the table. "They are not men, they are omens." Another voice whispered the word that had spread like contagion, demons. But Hardy had been right. Humanity would not be called demons. Demons tempted. Demons begged. Humans did neither. They came uninvited, offered no bargains, and left only silence behind. The boogeyman made sure they also left horror. On one broadcast, an alien general tried to reassure his troops. His speech was cut short when the camera panned to show the cape-draped figure perched on the roof behind him, smiling like a jester at a funeral. "Speech is boring," the boogeyman declared. "Show me action." The general's head rolled moments later, and the feed cut to static. Every attempt at propaganda backfired. Every denial was mocked. Every victory paraded by the Empire was undone within hours. The galaxy's faith in the throne cracked, and through those cracks humanity poured like water, unstoppable. In the bunker, Monroe leaned over the map of stars. Entire sectors flashed red, not from loss, but from liberation. He rubbed his temple. "This isn't war. This is a reckoning." Hardy's voice answered from the shadows. "No, this is introduction." Monroe glanced at him. Introduction to what? Hardy's gaze was steady, soft as velvet over steel. To what we always were. They saw us as prey. They will now see us as predators. The Empire tried one last desperate gambit. They gathered the remnants of their fleets, pulled ships from every corner of their dominion, and forged an armada said to rival the suns themselves. It stretched across the void, a chain of fire meant to cage humanity once and for all. The Emperor stood at the prow of his flagship, voice booming across every frequency. "This is the end. Humans will break under the weight of Empire." But humans had never fought with weight. They fought with sharpness, with unpredictability, with masks. And now the masks fell away. From Earth's shadow, fleets emerged, more than the Empire had ever counted, hidden for generations in silence. Thousands of ships, not crewed, not desperate, but honed, waiting. Their engines roared like wolves howling under a blood moon. And at their head, two figures led not armies, but inevitability. The boogeyman stood atop his ship as if gravity was suggestion. His cape whipped like fire, his grin split wide. "Boys and girls of the galaxy," he shouted, his voice echoing across comms. "Welcome to the real show." And Hardy, seated calmly in the command chair of another vessel, adjusted his tie, leaned toward the microphone, and said in a voice quiet enough to chill a billion spines, "We were patient. We were polite. We are done being both." The battle that followed was not battle, but dismantling. Alien ships fired, their beams swallowed by countermeasures humans had hidden for decades. Human fleets struck with precision, so exact it felt like choreography. Every strike was anticipated. Every movement mirrored. The Empire had prepared for an enemy that fought desperately. Instead, they faced one that fought deliberately. The boogeyman tore through their lines like a storm given flesh, his laughter a soundtrack of mockery. He ripped cannons from cruisers, hurled them back like toys, painted hulls with the blood of commanders. Aliens screamed not just in fear of death, but in disbelief of spectacle. He was absurd, and that absurdity broke them faster than fire. Hardy advanced slower, quieter. His fleets encircled, cut off supply, severed communication. Where the boogeyman made noise, Hardy made silence. Where one terrified through spectacle, the other strangled through inevitability. Together they wove chaos into design, until the great armada of the Empire was less than smoke. On the flagship, the Emperor howled, "They are men. Kill them." But even as he roared, he saw the cape across the void, the grin too wide, the figure stepping through flames as if walking into his throne room. And in the corner of his vision, he saw the suited man, calm, apologetic, straightening his cuffs as he walked down the corridor toward him. The Emperor raised his blade. "What are you?" he demanded. The boogeyman laughed, voice booming like thunder. "The thing under your bed." And Hardy's voice, low, polite, unshakable, followed. "The consequence you thought would never arrive." The throne room fell to silence. Later, when the galaxy looked back, they would say that the Empire died not with fire, but with realization. Realization that the masks humans wore, smiles, politeness, humor, had never been weakness. They had been the Predator's camouflage. In the bunker, Monroe stood before the final feed. The Empire's banners burned. Its fleets lay in ruin. He exhaled a breath that felt older than time. "We've won," he whispered. Hardy, appearing behind him, shook his head. "No, we've been seen." The words hung like prophecy. Humanity had taken off the mask. They had shown themselves not as victims, not even as survivors, but as predators who had chosen patience over hunger, until hunger could no longer be denied. Across the galaxy, alien worlds trembled. Some prayed, some begged, some fled, but all of them understood one truth: the humans had been underestimated, and the price of that mistake was everything. The boogeyman raised his cape high over the ruins, laughter spilling into the void. Hardy closed his eyes, voice soft but unyielding. "We asked for peace. They gave us graves. We gave them courtesy. They gave us massacre. Now we give them consequence." The cellar door was no longer open. It was gone, torn from its hinges, and what had lived inside walked freely into the galaxy. The final image burned into every witness's mind was not the cape, not the smile, not the blood, but the eyes of Alan Hardy, gentle and polite, as he said words that would be carved into history. "We are humanity. We were polite. We were patient. And you mistook both for weakness. You will not do so again." The feed cut. Silence fell. And in that silence, the galaxy understood. Humanity had taken off the mask, and the face beneath was not one they could ever unsee.